Have you ever woken up in the dead of night unable to move? Your body frozen, your mind racing. You try to scream, but no sound escapes. And then, just beyond the edge of the shadows, you feel it. A presence. Watching. Waiting. This is the story of Lily, a college student whose life turned into a waking nightmare. What began as sleepless nights spiraled into something far more sinister. She thought it was all in her head, but she was wrong. It started during midterms. Lily had been staying up late, surrounded by textbooks, empty coffee cups, and the soft hum of her desk lamp. She chalked up her exhaustion to stress. But exhaustion doesn't explain waking up paralyzed. The first night it happened, she woke suddenly. The air in her room felt heavy, like it had been vacuum sealed. She tried to move, but her body wouldn't respond. It was as if she had been buried alive in her own skin. Then she noticed it. At first, it looked like nothing more than a shadow in the corner of her room. But as her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she realized it wasn't just standing. It was swaying like a broken marionette. Her heart raced as the figure began to move, gliding toward her without a sound. Its eyes, two faintly glowing yellow orbs, were locked on hers. Lily tried to scream, but the weight on her chest was crushing. She couldn't even blink. The figure stopped inches from her face. It leaned down, its breath cold and acrid. And then it whispered, "I've always been here." When she woke up, she was drenched in sweat, her lungs heaving as if she'd been drowning. She told herself it was a bad dream. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. The paralysis episodes continued, night after night. Each time the figure grew bolder. At first, it stayed in the corner, but soon it was crouching at the foot of her bed. Then it was leaning over her, close enough for her to feel its icy fingers graze her skin. Lily began to notice a pattern. The episodes always happened at the same time, 3:33 a.m. She tried staying awake, but no matter how hard she fought, sleep always came for her. During the day, the shadow followed her. She would catch glimpses of movement out of the corner of her eye. Something dark and fast, just beyond her line of sight. One afternoon, she noticed something strange in her apartment. Her notebook, which she always left on her desk, was lying on the floor, its pages crumpled. She picked it up and froze. Scrawled across one of the pages, in faint, jagged lines, was a single word: mine. She tried to convince herself it was her imagination. But the whispers had started during the day, faint and unintelligible, echoing in the stillness. Desperate, Lily turned to a sleep specialist. He listened patiently as she described her experiences. "It's classic sleep paralysis," he explained. "Your brain is awake, but your body hasn't caught up yet. The figures and whispers are just hallucinations, tricks of the mind." But Lily wasn't convinced. "What about the scratches?" she asked, rolling up her sleeve. Her arm was lined with faint red marks, too symmetrical to be accidental. The doctor's expression darkened, but he didn't answer. Out of options, Lily visited a spiritualist. The woman, her apartment thick with the scent of incense, listened intently. When Lily finished, the woman sat in silence for a long moment before speaking. "You've opened a door," she said. "It might have been a thought, a fear, something you welcomed without knowing it. But now, it is here." The spiritualist handed her an amulet. "This might protect you," she said, "but be careful. Once it attaches to you, it's hard to break free." That night, Lily sat alone in her apartment, clutching the amulet. She tried to remember if she had ever invited something in, and then it hit her. Months earlier, at a party, her friends had been playing with the spirit board. She hadn't taken it seriously, but she remembered laughing as they asked questions into the void. She'd said something as a joke. "If anything's out there, I dare you to come find me." Her chest tightened as the memory resurfaced. She hadn't thought about it since that night, but now she was certain she had opened the door. The storm arrived just past midnight. Rain lashed against her windows, and the wind howled like a living thing. Lily lit the sage the spiritualist had given her and placed the amulet around her neck. But she couldn't stay awake. Exhaustion pulled her under, and once again she woke at 3:33 a.m. Her room was pitch black. The storm outside seemed to have muffled every sound, and there, at the foot of her bed, was the shadow. This time, it didn't hesitate. It crawled onto her chest, its weight suffocating. The whispers were deafening now, a chorus of voices that seemed to come from inside her own head. "You called me. You belong to me." Its fingers wrapped around her neck, cold and sharp like icicles. Lily felt her vision darken. She focused all her energy on moving, on screaming. Slowly, she managed to clench her fist. And then, she screamed. The sound tore through the silence, and the shadow recoiled. For a moment, its form seemed to flicker, like smoke caught in a breeze. Then it vanished. When Lily woke, the storm had passed, but the room was still cold. Her arms bore deep scratches, red and angry. She moved out of the apartment that day, hoping to leave the nightmare behind, but the shadow wasn't done with her. Weeks later, in her new apartment, she woke again at 3:33 a.m. For a moment, the room was silent. And then, from the corner, she heard it, the faint rustling of fabric. Her heart raced as her eyes adjusted to the dark. In the corner of the room, just beyond the edge of her vision, she saw them, two faintly glowing yellow eyes, watching, waiting. Because some doors once opened can never be closed.